So my first experience with death was when my grandpa died. I was very young, maybe 5 years old, and he died because of a heart attack, so very sudden. He was, I think, maybe 70 or so not that old actually. And I remember I was just crying, kind of paralyzed, and I think that's the very first description I would give if I describe what death is, that someone is just not there anymore. I mean, that's also how you would understand it as a kid. And it's also connected to how I look at death, actually, that it's just the end of a physical life. It's not that it's in a spiritual sense or something, that there's something which is there after death. I don't think so. I think that it's more like a non-functioning of the body as a whole system. It's not that there is a soul who continues living. I think in that case, we're just an animal, like a lot of the others. That's one other thought which I have, is that death is just a part of life. You can't avoid it. But also without death, there would not be life somehow. You know what I mean? But the other part of it is that not everybody wants to die. Not everybody is dying slowly at the end of a long and happy life. Of course, not everything was easy, but you still had your life. Some people get torn out of it, torn out of life, torn out of their families. Just like an aunt of mine who died 1 year after my grandpa died. She was, I think, beginning of her 50s, and she died because of breast cancer. And I think we were all very affected by it. And that time it felt like, okay, a person who had not lived a long life died and was just torn out of it. The cancer just killed her, basically. That just took her place away. She was not allowed to experience it more. And that's how I felt that death could also be very brutal. And yes, it definitely also felt unfair that time. So the last story I want to tell is my own. Because last year I had an experience where I felt that I could have died. I think there are a lot of situations like that when you're like, okay, what if I could die now because of something, like if something goes wrong, you might die. But that time it really felt like I got somehow close to it, because I went for a hike and I had somehow figured out a path. I just looked it up and I was like, okay, there is a path somewhere. So I was just trying to follow that. And at some point I was like, yeah, it doesn't look like a path anymore, but I still think that there is something. So I kept on going. And then I just followed, I think, like an invisible path, actually, because there was no path. But it just felt like, okay, this could be a path, or this could have been the path. So I was just following. And at some point, I lost my phone, which felt really bad. But I was still like, okay, I know that the path should somehow go in a certain way. So I continued after searching for the phone, but it was not possible to find it anymore. And it already made me feel quite uneasy. So I kept on, and after a while I was sure that there was no path at all. And it was a very dense forest, it was warm. At some point I didn't have food and water anymore. And I think I spent hours to kind of climb down a mountain, because I knew we'd have to kind of get down from it to reach a village, because like in the far distance I could see a village. I was just scratching my skin, and sometimes I was just stumbling, and I was completely exhausted, but I think I was also so much on adrenaline, because I knew that if something goes wrong now, I could just get stuck, and I don't think anyone would find me. So I was like, okay, I have to get out of here. I have to stay alive. I have to keep going. And even though there was nothing, I was just kind of like finding my way through the forest, but it was really tough. And when I finally got out of the forest, I was incredibly happy that I made it. I know that I was crying when I came out. I was so thankful that I had made it and that my body had worked all the way, that I was kind of lucky. I feel there's so much luck which is involved in our life every day. It's crazy, but I was just so thankful. And when I look at it now, I feel like, yeah, death is a part of life, because everybody will die one day. But yeah, I'm also very afraid of it. I don't want to die. I'm young. I have a lot of stuff to experience. And there's so many people who have lived long lives before me. I want to experience that too. And death just seems like a big void, a huge uncertainty. And yeah, generally I think I'm more afraid of people dying around me than about dying myself. Because maybe that's also because of something I've experienced, because I won't feel pain when I die. Maybe if I die in a very brutal way, but I will only feel pain for people who die around me, and I will feel the loss. And the thing that death is kind of unpredictable and can always happen makes me feel that I want to live my life. I want to be grateful for it. I want to be thankful for everything which I can and will experience, and I can't take everything for granted. There's so many lives which have been shortened by death, and I'm so happy to experience all of it till now.